Hello, everyone. Welcome to More Than a Refresh. This is a live event. This is a podcast about data and the people who wrangle it. Today, we are recording from Astoria, Queens, Bellingham, Washington, and Oakland, California. Our guest today is Cooper Quintin, Senior Staff Technologist at the glorious, my word, Electronic Frontier Foundation. For those that don't know, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Cooper, correct me if I was wrong or am wrong, was started way back when I was much younger. And Cooper, by the looks of you, you were even younger because the government overreached. The FBI didn't follow the rules. So the Electronic Frontier, not that anybody's surprised by this, our current administration just got slapped down by two federal courts for directly, that is a quote from the court, violating the First Amendment. That's right. Doesn't matter who you vote for. They are not out for our best interests. Quintin, please, or excuse me, Cooper Quintin. Am I saying Quintin right, or is there some kind of French thing going on there?
No, it is French, but there's nothing French going on there. Quintin, I think in France we pronounce it Quintin, but I'm not French, so we'll call it Quintin.
All right, well, do me a favor. Introduce yourself. Who are you? What's your background? So on and so forth.
Yeah, hi, JD. Thanks for having me here, and hi, everybody. So I am Cooper Quintin. I'm at the EFF. I am a senior staff technologist at the EFF, specifically on our Threat Lab project. I've been at EFF for about 9 years now. And which is by far the longest I've ever been in any job. But testament to how amazing the EFF is as both a place to work and as a place that does good work on the outside as well. At EFF, I started out working on Privacy Badger, our browser add-on to block trackers that spy on you and follow you around online. I eventually shifted to doing more cybersecurity focused work, looking at nation state spyware and malware, specifically malware targeting journalists, activists, human rights lawyers, malware really going after freedom of speech and freedom of expression, right? And so that's with our Threat Lab sub-project. And now, I do that. I do a lot of other things as well. I've recently been looking at privacy in the XR context, so like AR, VR, biometric privacy, and thinking about that. I've done work on license plate readers, cell site simulators, all sorts of other law enforcement spying technologies. Right now, looking at some spying technology from a group called Shadow Dragon, which has some like open source intelligence technology to spy on people's social media networks and social media feeds. And yeah, I'm just really wearing a lot of hats and looking at a wide variety of things in my 9 years at EFF.
Shadow Dragon? Did I hear that right?
Yeah. So the company is called Shadow Dragon. And if you're familiar with open source intelligence at all, basically what they're doing is they're selling feeds for graphing software, right? Like feeds for like graph for software that makes social graphs. And I'm blanking on the name, unfortunately, right now of the software. But it's like this software, it's embedded, it's in every like Kali Linux distribution and stuff, but they sell
so
these
basically
open source...
it maps out the relationships is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And so they don't sell that software, but they sell feeds of intelligence, basically feeds of data that they've scraped from websites like Facebook. They claim to have scraped data from WhatsApp. They have data that they've scraped from a site for new moms, like discussing their babies and stuff, right? They scrape stuff from Discord, from Telegram, from WhatsApp, from basically everywhere, and put it all in these giant feeds that law enforcement and whoever else can then go buy. And so we know they have customers like DHS, the NYPD, and a lot of other, the Army, and a lot of other presumably local and federal agencies.
So we do have everything you just said.
Yeah.
We do have an outline, we do have a time limit, but I do want to touch on this one thing because it's come up not only on the previous episodes we've done with the EFF. By the way, huge fan.
Thanks.
In
Me
fact, thank you. EFF used to years and years and years ago when I launched Postgres Conference in the United States, EFF would actually send us boxes of your little notebooks. and stuff like that,
Oh,
and stickers that we would use to promote. That being said, the interesting thing here,
we're actually a swag company, a t-shirt and sticker company that does digital rights as a side hustle to promote our swag.
It's funny because that's absolutely appropriate, right? That if you find your base and they're willing to spend money to advocate your platform, that's how you make enough money to support your political causes, right? And then, frankly, they're not even political causes; they're civil causes.
Yeah,
because political causes are bullshit. It's civil causes that we need to focus on.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say before we lose track is that this did come up on multiple episodes, not only of EFF, but when we did Boltiv and a couple of others, in that what people don't recognize, what the mass populace who have been, and I'm going to use your line here, right here, in speaking with our producer, you said that AR and VR is bullshit. I agree with you, but I want to modify that statement. We are already in the age of, first off, I've been doing this so long that I remember when AR and VR could only be on a screen that was this big, right? Because we just didn't have the bandwidth. And it was pixelated and it was terrible and, all that. But that being said, we're already in the age. We already have documented instances of social programming from social media companies to determine a result that is positive to them and negative to you, because by human nature, we are drawn to it because of the dopamine hit. That is the AR and VR of today, where you have somebody on TikTok telling you that this happened or that happened, and the world is terrible, and you buy into it and you suck it down like a McDonald's milkshake. It's terrible. But more importantly, is that you said that Shadow Dragon, who clearly has spent too much time with Dungeons and Dragons and Lord of the Rings, has these feeds. Now, I know these feeds exist, and if you don't know these feeds exist, you're not paying attention. Now, you say to yourself, I don't care. The problem is not you. The problem is the government. The government, not to get all ragey, but by law, they can't get that from you. They cannot snoop on you without a warrant. So that's what exactly they do instead, because most people, and when I say most, I'm talking 99% of the population, doesn't understand, one, terms and conditions or usage agreements. Two, even if they did, won't read them anyway because they have lawyers that make them 17 pages long, and who's got time for that? I got to see my grandkids' pictures on Facebook.
Somebody did a study. If you read every terms of service that you encountered on a daily basis, it would take like 25 hours or something like that to actually read and parse every terms of service that you interact with on a daily basis. More time than actually exists in a day.
And that's on purpose.
100% on purpose. Yeah.
So, it's the point is the government is using these companies to violate your rights without actually violating your rights. They are circumventing the law because the user just doesn't care. And they really should.
They should. If the government wanted to get this data from Facebook, they would have to go get a warrant. They would have to send that to Facebook, deal with Facebook's lawyers, maybe, if the warrant was improper, or, if they wanted to get it off of a service that actually protected your privacy, right? They just might not be able to. But if they can buy this data, location data, social media connections, all of this stuff from a private company, so far the legal system has decided, well, that's all well and good. There's no problem there, right? And so the U.S. government is allowed to buy whatever data they want about you, as long as it's been laundered through commercial interests, right? And if that's the case, apparently the Fourth Amendment just gets thrown out the window. We obviously think that this is a very bad situation.
Well, I mean, the government has got a history since the beginning of our government of throwing whatever amendment they don't like out the window for the case of invent one. So let's move on before we get too deep into this, because I think you and I, by the end of the podcast, so we keep talking about this, are going to be sharing whiskey virtually and not making a whole lot of sense to people. I'm ragey enough just at the idea of it. But and I know we're going to get to this, so I just hang in with me. But there's another topic that we want to have you on separately for, but I do want to touch on it for 15 minutes ish or less. Ecarceration.
Yeah.
Now, I want to say something, and I would like you to follow up with everything that you have here.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest understandable mistakes. I completely get it. You broke the law, you do the time. Okay? I get it. I get that mentality, right? You went and you stole, or you raped, or you murdered, or whatever the case may be. You go to jail. That's fine. You've got to pay your price. The problem is a truly good society. And when I say good, I'm not talking about economics. I'm talking about the philosophical good. Takes into account humanity, which means we must. It is non-optional to be a good society, rehabilitative as well as disciplinary. We have forgotten that for some reason. Your turn.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so like, if we, I mean, personally, I'm a prison abolitionist. I think that our entire prison system and carceral system and justice system needs to be realigned. But if we let's take it at face value that, what you said, if you do the crime, you do the time, right? That should be like, that would be a much better starting point than what we have right now. And that should be the end of it. Right now, the fact is, once you do the time, once you get out of prison, that's only the first part of you serving the time,
mm-hmm.
right? First of all, you end up with this felony status on your head, which makes it harder to find jobs, find housing, right?
Vote.
Integrate, vote. Yeah, you can't vote anymore, which, boy, like preventing felons from voting, sure is a good way to control, the populace and control who gets to vote, especially when you make it so that it's a felony to do something like pirate a video or smoke weed, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way to make sure that you keep the voting population in line. But that aside, you also have probation, right? And so now we have this thing called ecarceration, which is, you used to have an ankle monitor, right? And when you get out of jail, you have an ankle monitor, which, boy, we don't have the time to get into the like social stigma, right? The pariah that having an ankle monitor would make you, right? And so yeah, when you're done doing the time, you're really not done doing the time. But now, instead of an ankle monitor, you can have an app, right? And so there's all of these companies getting into this market of essentially ankle monitor apps, right? So your phone is now your ankle monitor, right? Which boy, I don't think that what's his name? One of the old sci-fi writers, right? Who wrote Philip Dick. I don't think Philip Dick could have dreamed of such a appropriate sci-fi dystopia, right? Where everybody carries
I don't know.
ankle monitor around on them all times.
I mean, 1984. Animal Farm. I mean, there's plenty of authors out there that are classic that are, if they were alive today, they're like, I fucking told you.
Right. You could power several homes with the energy generated by Orwell rolling in his grave. But
the new hydro.
Yeah. But it's green because of the mold on his dead body. But sorry. Anyway, this is the kind of topical appropriate humor you brought me here for. No, but the point is that our phone makes a really excellent ankle monitor, it turns out, because it's tracking your location all the time. You can force people to take a picture and send it to you to show that they, that the phone is actually on them, right? They can do a little bit of face recognition to make sure that it is actually a picture of them, right? And you get the bonus of being able to potentially monitor what you're doing on your phone, right? To make sure you're not talking with any known criminal associates or doing anything bad, right? so there's this new industry that's cropping up of this e-carceration industry, right? Um, um, Ankle monitor apps, basically.
Mhm.
And what that has led to is there is this movement that's good, which is to end bail, right? And we should end bail. The bail system is absolutely insane. It makes it so that poor people go to jail while rich people get to walk free, which is, I mean, we've always had a two-tiered justice system, but this just like bail just, is another pin in that.
Let me,
system,
if I can interject here.
Yeah.
That's a curious statement to me. So I live, as you do, on the West Coast. I live, as you do, in a fairly left-leaning area.
Mm-hmm.
I live, as you do, in a place where, and understand, I am not being derogatory. I am being factual.
Mm-hmm.
Where we have a large population of homeless, unhoused, whatever politically correct term you want to use today, who are criminal justice involved. Thank you, California. Who are likely on some kind of illicit substance. And I'm not talking about cannabis. Okay. I'm talking about, I mean, in my town, we literally just had a raid on a homeless encampment where they seized enough fentanyl to kill every person in my town. That's 100,000 people.
Yeah, but that was still only like 5 grams.
Well, granted, it is a very small amount, but still, I mean,
and if it's 100,000 cops, it's like 1 gram because cops are somehow unusually susceptible to fentanyl.
Well, my point is, you're right. I think that justice has always been, it's a class. Our justice system is class based. Okay, the lower class you are, the more likely you are to get a punishment that you cannot rehabilitate from because you have no money, right? Yeah. But on the other hand, you do read about pretty consistently nowadays where so-and-so was arrested for, it happens in Seattle often. I'm not in Seattle, but, so-and-so has 20 years history of being justice involved or court involved and gets put out on cashless bail. They're out because they're deemed not a threat to society, in which case 2 weeks later they're arrested again. So what's your fix for that without bail?
I mean, but bail, so I will answer that, but bail doesn't actually fix that, right? Like that only fixes that for that guy because he doesn't have a family that can pay his bond. If that guy had a family that could pay his bond, he could have got out and done the same exact thing, right? Like bail doesn't actually keep, if the point of bail is to keep dangerous people off the streets, it has utterly failed, right?
No, I would agree with that.
Because it doesn't necessarily. It keeps poor people off of the streets, right? And so, I like it should be up to judges to determine who is a danger, to themselves or others, and needs to remain, in jail until their court date. Who is a flight risk and needs to remain in jail, and who isn't. But bail is just saying like, okay, you remain in jail unless you have the money to say otherwise, right? And that's it's like parking tickets, right? Like, or like anything that's punishable with a fine, right? If it's punishable with a fine, that means it's illegal for poor people to do it, right? It's not illegal for rich people to do it, right? It's not illegal if you can afford the fine. But okay, to get us back to the e-carceration topic, regardless of whether you have bail or not, people that are being put out on bail, people that are being put out not on bail, people are being forced to install these apps, right? And because these apps are a lot cheaper per person for the government to mandate an installation of, they've come to largely replace ankle monitors. But more than that, you now have a huge increase in the amount of people that are forced to be on some sort of pre-trial or post-trial supervisory surveillance, right? Because you can't put an ankle monitor on everybody. That just costs too much. But you can put this app on everybody, right? That's easy. And so you have anybody who's basically, you're getting to a point where anybody who interacts with the court system is essentially like, the vast majority of them are being told to install these apps, right? And being forced to install these apps, right? And at a much higher rate. So you get this vast expansion of the, carceral surveillance apparatus, by bringing down the price of it, right? And it forces people to own smartphones, right? Whether or not they can afford one or want one, right? Now you have to have this round the clock surveillance on your phone, right? And your phone is no longer your, to whatever degree it was your private domain before that. It is certainly not that anymore, right? So yeah, it's a concern, and I think that, my concern is that this is going to become ubiquitous, right? Like anybody, like, oh, well, you were arrested for a felony, right? You weren't charged, but like, we're still going to, keep this app on your phone just in case, right? Or like, a thing we're seeing is ICE putting these apps on everybody's phones trying to enter the country, right? And I'm not gonna open the can of worms about immigration policy, but like,
that's a much longer discussion.
yeah. That's gonna be an even longer discussion than the bail discussion. But like that's, whereas before ICE wouldn't have put an ankle monitor on everybody trying to enter the country, right? But now like even people trying to enter the country legally, even people trying to go through the proper channels and go through the system, right, are being forced to install these apps, right? And so I think that I think that that's my major concern. But there's another aspect of incarceration, which is that once you're in jail, there are two big companies, Global Telink and Securus, that are trying to monetize every aspect of the this is a dystopian phrase, every aspect of the jail experience, right? Every aspect of the, yeah. And so like they want to monitor, they started out being the like payphone operators, right? Like when you have to call collect to somebody in jail and you have to pay $2 a minute or something like that, right? That's how they got started. But they've, they're now looking for other revenue streams because they want to increase their profits. So they're getting into tablets for prisoners where like you can pay, you can make a phone call, but you have to make it through the tablet, right? And of course the entire phone call is recorded. And after that phone call, they're going to do facial recognition on the person you called and analysis of your conversation to see if you discussed anything potentially illegal, right? To automatically flag for some CO to come further investigate you.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
We're going to run out of time on this one thing. I'm going to say something and then Lindsay, our producer, is going to mark this because I have a feeling you're going to be on this show a lot. What you just said, and I mean no disrespect to those who are trying to make their lives better, who recognize that they're doing time for a crime and they want to be better humans in society and rehabilitate. This is not about that.
Sure.
Every person that sees this, that hears what he just said, this is why AI, as they call it, is bad. Because computers only do, even AI, okay, quote unquote AI, which is bullshit. Even AI only does what humans or machines that were programmed by humans were told to do, which means when you have two companies that are controlling the majority of communications for people who have the hope, in theory, of being rehabilitated, all they have to do is tweak the algorithm, and those people never get out alive. Ever. For whatever it is they did. Exactly. They shit on some senator's lawn who is on some subcommittee, who somehow becomes speaker, had zero money, and now is worth $290 million, Nancy Pelosi. And she's destroyed you, your family, everything, because she didn't like that you shit on her lawn. Now, I don't think Nancy Pelosi did this. I'm saying that the government is purposely moving in this direction. The government doesn't do this stupidly. They do not have these two companies go forth and say, tell us how to screw over everybody. They're going forward saying, tell us how to control everybody, especially those that we don't like.
So I'll say, there's a phrase which is never attribute to malice what could be sufficiently explained by stupidity. Right?
Sure.
And I think in this case, like that's, and look, don't get me wrong. Not defending the government. Never want to be in a position where I'm defending the government. Not a big fan of governments. That said, what we're seeing is a lot of shift to like private prisons, right, and privately run,
right,
for-profit run prisons, which is an insane thing to run for profit. Yeah,
it's wrong.
And I think that what Securus and Global Tellink are really offering is ways to increase the margins on your privately run prison, right? Like you can nickel and dime, right, the prisoners on the inside, just like you're nickel and diming the everybody else on the outside, right, through every technological interaction, right? And you can also, and it's toward the same ends as what you were saying, right? A private prison, not even politically motivated, right? Which is even more terrifying, perhaps, will try to keep prisoners in longer so that they can make more money on every day that person is in prison, right?
All right.
So
last comment on this, but then we got to move on. You just made the most important point that everybody has to hear, understand, and learn. And I feel for people who just don't get this. I feel even more for the people that do and don't know what to do about it. It's not about left. It's not about right. It's not about green. It's not about blue. It's not about red. Yep. It's about money.
Yep.
It's always about money. This is why, since the beginning of time, whether you're Christian or not, since Jesus walked into the temple and threw all of the vendors who were taking advantage, it is about money. Now, money inherently is not bad. When you assign value to something, it makes it worth something. And if someone feels that it is worth that, they'll pay that or they'll work to pay that. That in itself isn't bad. But it should be the result of good work. It should not be the goal of bad work.
Exactly.
Okay, got to move on. AR, VR, we were already supposed to be here. But I know, let's do 5 minutes on this because I want to make sure, because the next topic after AR, VR is it's your favorite dessert. And I want to make sure that it is appropriately made and served to you on a platter of glory. So, AR, VR. You said AR, VR is bullshit. We did touch on it a little bit. Continue.
Yes. Yeah, it's all part of this tech hype cycle, right? So, okay. You have Facebook, right, which starts out making a hot or not app, right, for Harvard students, right, realizes that the actual money, right, is in network effects, is in getting everybody sort of locked onto their network, right? And so starts out saying, oh hey, like we're the you're all on MySpace, right? But that's run by a billionaire, right? Who knows what they're doing? Like we're gonna be privacy focused. You're just gonna see your friends, right, and nothing else, right? Like that's all you actually want, right? And this is just for students, in fact, right now, right? No ads, no anything, just your friends, right? And so you get all the students on there because that's the cool new thing, right? And then you open it up to everybody else and you get everybody else on there, right? And then you start you start making it worse, right? You start putting ads on there, you start locking people in, and people can't leave because that's where everybody is, right? And Facebook is making money hand over fist on this, right? Like they become one of the largest companies in the world basically overnight, right? But then it gets worse and worse, and that'll lead into the topic later. But it gets worse and worse, right? Like, you end up live streaming a mass shooting, right? You end up with the Cambridge Analytica scandal, where somebody scrapes all of your data off of Facebook abuse, and uses Facebook to
everything.
Yeah, child abuse, all of this stuff, right? Somebody uses Facebook to influence how you vote, right? Suddenly your aunt and uncle are posting all of their most absolutely unhinged opinions on there because they're being nudged that way by dopamine receptors and the outrage machine that keeps you hooked to reading Facebook over and over and over and scrolling, right? And everybody starts to leave, right? Like, you want to find Gen Z, you don't find them on Facebook, right? You want to find millennials, elder millennials, with geriatric millennials like myself, you don't find them on Facebook, right? Gen X is barely on Facebook anymore. And so Facebook needs a new way to bring those customers back, right? Because that's what we are. We're not Facebook users. Not customers. They need a new way to bring that product back, right? Because we're not customers of Facebook. We're not its users. We're the product, right?
That is correct. Let's be clear on that. You are not a customer of Meta. The customer for Meta is the company that runs the ad that you click on. You are the product of Meta. Facebook itself, or Instagram, or Threads, are not products. They're gateways. They're the post office. They're the ones that bring you the information that you are so desperately seeking, but you're not, but they convince you that you are. And you click on it, and then they get to charge whoever for that. Right? And let's be further clear. Facebook's brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. And I'll tell you why. Because all they did was convince the world that AOL.com and CompuServe.com and Prodigy.com and Delphi.com should be free.
Yeah.
That's all they did. They don't offer anything that those services didn't offer 25 years ago, 30 years ago. You may continue,
Exactly.
Cooper.
Yeah, and it's free because your eyes are what they're selling.
Well, it's not free. That's our cost, right? There's no such thing as free. That is our cost.
Yeah, exactly. So, but there's so if you have all of the people on your network, right? You have network effects. People are locked in to Facebook because that's where their friends are, right? You don't want to, if you go somewhere else, right? You go to another social media site. Let's Google Circles, right? To take us back a few years, right?
Google Plus Circles.
Right, Google Plus Circles. Why am I on Google Plus? Nobody else is here, right? This is dumb. So I'm going to stay on Facebook, right? And as long as people are staying on Facebook, that's where the advertisers have to be, right? And so there's a network effect for advertisers too. And everybody gets locked in. But as soon as people start leaving, as soon as Generation Z starts another marketing term, right? Generations are just entirely a marketing term, but that's another side rant. As soon as Generation Z starts not showing up, right? As soon as millennials start leaving, Facebook has to buy Instagram because that's where all the millennials are at, right? Facebook has to try to use their lobbyists to shut down TikTok because that's where Gen Z is at, right? But they also need a new product to get those eyeballs back, to get their product back, which is us, right? And so they buy Oculus. And so VR is you have this attempt to make this giant hype wave, right? VR is going to change everything, right? VR is going to revolutionize the world. Everybody is going to use VR every day for everything. You're going to use it at your office, at home, at work. You're going to have a pair of VR goggles strapped to your head, 16 to 20 hours a day, right? And most people can't stand to have these things strapped to their head for more than an hour. Right? Like I work on this, partly for a living, right? And can you imagine, like, okay, think about how much, me and you aside, JD, everybody else, imagine how much your job sucks right now.
I can't be fired. My job doesn't suck.
That's why I said everybody else besides you. I love my job. I get to do this. But now imagine strapping a pair of VR goggles to your head for that entire 8 hours as well, right? Nobody wants to do that. That's not improving anybody's lives.
Hold on. I disagree. First, well, I don't disagree that I think it's ridiculous and it's a bad thing. And I also don't think that we are, at least in my lifetime, going to reach a point where it is consumable on a mass scale.
Yeah.
That said, if you and I step out of our tech bubble,
sure.
Okay. Well, let's put it this way. It's the new fentanyl. It's the new methamphetamine. Okay.
Oh, sure.
The moment that they can slap on this video or this hand or even, okay, what made the internet? What exploded the internet? Porn.
Yeah.
Imagine a 19-year-old young man able to strap on one of these things and get realistic biofeedback.
Oh, totally.
Okay, it is going to break the market. And then they're going to do what they do best, which is they're going to turn porn into an advertising stream where people blink their eye 3 times to click an icon and money comes out of their account.
Yeah.
And then 20% of the population will suck that up instantly.
And then you get rid of the porn, right? And then
you get rid of the porn
because that's a dirty business, and now you just have the eyeballs, right?
Yep.
That's. I mean, I think you're exactly right. Like, and look, I mean, I grew up reading William Gibson and Neil Stephenson, right? Like, as did apparently, whoever decided that Zuckerberg should call it the Metaverse, right? But like I want. I want hyper realistic VR, right? Like I grew up dreaming of that, right? But what I don't want is a floating torso, right? A sexless body interacting in a Mark Zuckerberg defined world where my every move is recorded and monetized, and my every my every thought is recorded to further sell products, right? And that's Oculus's vision of the world, right?
It's not just Oculus, but yes.
I mean, that is exactly, certainly, right? That is the big tech vision of the VR world, right? And that's not a world I want to live in, right? I think that there's a lot of hype cycle, right? There's a lot of like, come invest in our company. Everybody's going to use this, right? It's going to be the next big thing. Come invest in the metaverse, right? And the metaverse is already a dead mall, right? Like nobody's hanging out in Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse, right? There's a few people in VR chat, right? But like, Second Life, did this better,
decades
20
ago.
years ago, right?
Yeah.
With and they did that without surveilling everybody using it, without nickel and diming everybody, right? But yeah, there's a lot to be said about VR. But like I think that the most concerning thing to me is the amount of biometric data that VR headsets collect, right? Like, so eye tracking data alone is really, really invasive, right? Like eye tracking data can tell a lot about what the person's thinking, right? Like, when you look at this image, do your pupils dilate, right? If you look at this image longer, right? Like, do you look at this image for a microsecond longer or this image for a microsecond longer, right? Eye tracking data. So there's studies, which I obviously have not empirically reviewed because I'm not a scientist of this caliber, right? But like there's studies that suggest that eye tracking can be used to determine, your sexuality, right? Whether you're gay, straight, bi, whatever. If you're an alcoholic, right? If you're, what your moods are, right? Like what your
political
opinions
after
are.
this conversation, we're going to have more alcoholics.
I mean, working in this field, it's certainly made me an alcoholic.
So I don't want us to run out of time because the last one is important here. And I keep in mind, everything you just said, I agree. I do want to say one thing in defense of Facebook. And people are like, holy shit. But they did do something that, and again, it wasn't original. AOL had it, CompuServe had it, they all had it. Facebook, and I'm not talking about Instagram, I'm talking about Facebook. Facebook is very good at bringing people together into a square, a digital square. Now, and they have their tools are like, if you compare Facebook's tools against something like Reddit hasn't even gotten out of elementary school in terms of usability, manageability. If you're willing to take the time to deal with trolls, all that kind of stuff. So I want to give them that. That said, if we're talking about intent or purpose, it was not for the good. It was to allow people to come as a product so they could make a lot more money. And I own a business. I am for profit. This is not an anti-profit rant in any way, shape, or form. I just don't think it should ever be the goal. It should be the reward for good work.
Exactly.
Now we're going to talk about, because Lindsay's our producer for those who are watching live. She puts together these outlines for me and she prays every time that I will stick to them, and every time I don't. But this time I'm trying really hard because this is such an important discussion. And you have coined a term, and we might actually go over on this, and I hope that
so I did not coin this term.
Oh, you did not? Okay. You have co-opted a term.
Yes.
You have ran a pull request and pulled a fork on this term, whatever you want to call it, the enshitification of the internet. Now, for our millennial friends, our Gen Z friends, I am actually
I'm a millennial.
But you're as Eliza.
I'm a geriatric millennial.
Yeah, you're an elder millennial.
Yeah,
I am Gen X. The internet wasn't, it was actually, I'll put it this way. The internet has always been shit. Okay? Period. But in the beginning, the people that actually understood the technology were in charge. That's not what we have now. The people that are in charge now have no fucking clue. Right? We're talking about people that can't use an iPhone. That's who's in charge, right? So, Cooper, let us have it.
Yeah. So
define it first.
Yeah. So, first, credit where credit is due. Enshitification was coined by my colleague and friend Cory Doctorow, who's an amazing author and activist who's been doing this work for even longer than I have. But yeah, exactly. So when I first got on the internet, right, back in the era of BBSs and dial-up, right, the
2400 baud modem.
Yeah, right. And it was shitty back then. Like sometimes literally, right? I spent a lot of time on rotten.com for my fellow Gen Xers and elder millennials who remember that site, right? But it wasn't right. Back then the internet was run by people who loved the technology and loved the internet, right? And wanted to make it and saw the revolutionary potential of it, right? Saw a way to bring people together, to connect people, to have a space where they could discuss whatever they wanted, a space that wasn't monetized, right? A public commons, a public square, right? Mm-hmm. Like you were saying. And now the internet is run by the stock market, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's run not just for profit, like you were saying, but like for the sole purpose of generating more and more profits, right? For the sole purpose of maintaining monopolies of power, right? Of maintaining the internet. The internet back then was a billion little GeoCities sites, right? And a billion little BBSs, right? And
I predate that.
Right, a billion, or not even a billion, but like 1,000 BBSs, right? Yeah, exactly. Usenet, a million little blogs, right? And now it's as somebody else coined, 5 large websites all sharing pictures of content from the other 4, right? Like the internet now is just, Facebook showing a Reddit post, Twitter showing a Facebook post, Instagram and YouTube stealing, and TikTok all stealing each other's posts, right? And a whole bunch of DRM on top of that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's not your imagination, right? Technology has gotten worse, right? Mm-hmm. Like it is getting worse by the day, right? I threw it on the floor because it was making vibrating noises. I have an iPhone here, right? I have a supercomputer by, 2000 standards in my pocket at all times. But can you write a program on this? No, you can't, right? Like back when I was learning how to program.
Let me interject here for those that don't know. What he means is what you do is you write a program either in Linux or Windows in a framework and a toolkit and a simulator, and then you can apply to either have it go to a controlled store that can then be downloaded, or you can, and in Android's case, because I don't run Apple anywhere.
Or you can sideload it and
you can sideload
run it yourself.
Yeah.
Right. But you can't develop for the computer on the computer, right? Like when I got my first computer, a 286, right, black and white, I could write programs for it in BASIC, right? I could write the program in BASIC, run the program right then. And that's how I learned how to program, right? With an iPhone, with an Android phone, there's no equivalent to that, right? These are general purpose computers, right? These are Turing complete machines that you can do anything on. Mm-hmm. But if it's up to Apple and Google, you will not do that, right? You will only do these, these are machines that will only be used for consuming content, right?
It's worse than that because you don't own it.
And yeah, right. And
you don't own it. Whatever's on that, you do not own it. Yeah. Apple or Google at any point can say, and actually I ran into this with Amazon too, with Prime recently. They say, I bought X.
Yeah.
Okay. And in my case, what happened was I bought the last season of The Walking Dead. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of the last season of The Walking Dead, AMC Plus launched. Yeah. So I then Prime killed my subscription and I had to go buy AMC Plus to watch the rest of the season. Now, Why that's important is because the same thing happens with Apple and Google. If they have a disagreement with the publisher, they'll just disable it on your phone remotely.
Yeah, you didn't buy those bits. You didn't buy that software. You bought a license to use that. Right. To use that software, right? And that license also prohibits things like reverse engineering that software. That prohibits things like making other software that's interoperable with that software, right? Which, by the way, is how these companies got so big in the first place, right? Like through reverse engineering, right? That's the reason why we have 1 million IBM PC clones, right? That's why any computer can run Windows, right? Is because somebody reverse engineered how the IBM PC works and made a open standard that any computer could then copy to run IBM compatible programs, right? And to run Windows and to run everything else. But now that these corporations have gained power, they would like to see their monopoly entrenched, right? So that they can continue making profits hand over fist. And so they have made the very tactics that they use to get so big illegal, right? So that nobody else can, reverse engineer their software and come after them, right? If you want to reverse the DRM on the song that you downloaded on the Apple Store, right? If you want to try to crack the DRM so that you can have a copy of that song that you bought, regardless of whether Apple revokes your license to it or not, right? That's a felony. That's punishable by up to 12 years in prison and a $500,000 fine, right? Which is more than rapists get. The enshitification of technology and of the internet is about sort of locking down, right? Locking down all these computers, locking down everything that you do so that you can't use this general purpose computer in your pocket as a general purpose computer, right? So that you can only use it to get content, right? But the other thing that I think is contributing to the enshitification of the internet is tech hype cycles, right? So like you have, the 90s.com boom, and that falls apart, right? And that was the original hype cycle, right? Everybody's, you have
hold on. I think you're missing something there. You're right. I mean, the .com boom. I mean,
that's not the original hype cycle.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. I mean, come on, radio, TV, cable, Playboy channel. Right. Let's talk hype cycles.
I mean, we can go back to what is it? The Danish flowers. What kind of flowers was it? Whenever tulips? If you ever start tulips, the tulip craze in Denmark, right? Where like everybody, I think it was tulips. What? I can't tell the story because I'm going to mess.
It's tulips. I mean, we have a big thing here about it. Well, if you really want to get old school, let's talk hype cycle. Biblically speaking, Christian or not, what was the first miracle?
Turning water into wine.
Water into wine, baby.
Yeah,
the first hype cycle. And that just launched a whole 2,000 years of people either loving or hating, right?
Right.
So go back to but let's go back on point. What is your...
I'll say, I mean, there are technologies which genuinely do change the world, right? Like,
sure.
Figuring out fermentation genuinely changes the world.
Yes, it did.
Right? Radio, TV genuinely changed the world. Personal computers, and then the internet, and then smartphones all genuinely upend the entire world, right? For at least a little bit until power structures figure out how to reassert themselves, right? And figure out how to co-opt this new technology and use it to reassert themselves. But what you have now is, and those are legitimate hype cycles, right? Like that's not a hype cycle. Those are just legitimate technological revolutions, right? Agriculture, like those are legitimate.
What you're talking about is Nike came out with a new shoe, and so there's a line around the store.
Exactly. Or like, more importantly, right, finance bros figured out that they could do a cryptocurrency grift, right? And Wall Street figured out that it could do a cryptocurrency grift, right? And so then suddenly you have a million cryptocurrency companies, right? And you have Sam Bankman and everybody saying like, this is going to be the new, this is going to revolutionize all of finance. This is going to change everything, right? You get a big bump in the stock market, right? Or the crypto market, you get a big cash infusion, right? And then, everybody takes their money and runs, and you find out that you're the bag holder, right? And then that hype cycle is done. But you have to keep the profits coming, because if you're a publicly traded company like Facebook, right, or Meta, right, as they're now called, you have to keep the investors happy, right? You have to keep the line going up, right? That's the most important thing. So you have to find a new hype cycle, right? Facebook is dying. So how are we going to keep the line going up? How are we going to keep the investors happy, right? We've already squeezed everything we can out of the advertisers. We've already squeezed everything we can out of the publishers. We've already squeezed everything we can out of the Facebook, out of the product, right? Out of the Facebook users, and we're losing product. So what's the next thing where we can squeeze people? Oh, VR, right? Well, nobody really wants Oculus, right? Nobody really wants an Oculus Rift. Like it's great for porn, but and it's good. It's great for video games. Like it's fine for video games, right? But not much else.
Fine for casual video games.
Exactly. But so let's create a new hype cycle around that, right? Everybody's gonna, and then so Mark Zuckerberg comes out and says everybody's gonna live in the metaverse, right? The metaverse is the new thing, right? Move all your realty to the metaverse. Everybody invest in the metaverse, right? And like, what is the metaverse? Well, it's a sexless floating torso that can buy shit. Oh, well, great, right? And so
let me ask you something though. I mean, haven't we moved beyond that? I mean, isn't the latest hype cycle chat GBT and AI?
Yes, exactly. And so metaverse is boring. It's a dead mall. Nobody goes there, right? And so now you have to now the market has to find a new hype cycle. And the new hype cycle exactly is large language models, chat GPT, AI, right? And so now everything has to be AI based, right? And I'm blanking on his name, the CEO of OpenAI, right? is out there saying like AI is going to kill us all, right? Like this AI is so dangerous that we have to lock it down, right? And stop all research on AI for 6 months so that we can just get a handle on this thing and figure out what's going on, right? And that benefits OpenAI. He's saying that not because, like maybe because he's genuinely crazy and thinks that he has actually built the singularity, which he hasn't. But I think more importantly, because that actually benefits him, that benefits OpenAI more than anyone else, right? Like they are, genuinely pretty far ahead on large language models, right? Which is a very specific, there are a lot of, I'm not an AI developer, and I know some attendee at this conference is going to murder me on Mastodon afterwards for saying something incorrect about AI. But like large language models are a small subset of AI, right? Somebody said it's a word calculator, right? Like it's certainly not sentient, right? It's just using statistics to put together plausible words and understand, more or less what you're saying, right? And understand some context. But what this does when he says like AI is going to change the world, like it might kill us or it might save us, but we need to pause on it for 6 months, right? Well, if something was going to kill all of humanity, genuinely, I would think you would want to pause on that for more than 6 months.
Like
right?
Ever.
And yeah, exactly.
No, so
and the
the
reason he's saying that is because it's not, right? He doesn't actually think that it's going to do that. What it does is it increases the hype. It increases the everybody goes, oh, this AI stuff must be really powerful, right? And then everybody starts putting it in everything, right? And now you have Bing search with AI, right? And Bing is telling you to go kill yourself. And you have
well, if you're using Bing, I mean
that's yeah.
Okay,
but what else are you going to use? Google? Because Google is now like you have all this AI generated content that is completely screwing up Google, right? The first page of Google, if you search today, is so much worse than it used to be.
Yeah, well, and part of that is because of their need to continue to sell. But
yeah,
let's move on a little bit, because I mean you did touch on like the stock market problem with the fact is that your finance bros. The reality of it is that these are really smart people, and they know how to manipulate things to to their end, and I do mean to their end. It's not our end; it's their end.
No.
We are running low on time, so there's a couple of things we want to talk about here, and then I have a bomb to drop that and I know, and frankly, some of our listeners probably know.
I have a couple other things I want to say about AI too.
Okay, go for it. Hit me.
Okay. So I do think I've said that most of these technologies won't change the world. I do think AI will change the world, and here's how I think it'll change the world with it already and within the next couple of years as well. Is it's going to increase the enshitification of the internet, right?
Yes.
You're going to have people using large language models to generate bullshit articles about whatever to fill up their sites, right? You're going to have people using LLMs to make even more bots on Twitter, on Facebook, on the other 3 social media sites. That is going to fill Google search results up with bullshit, and that is going to fill everything else on the internet with bullshit, and that is going to fill people's minds up with bullshit, right? So what the way that AI is going to change the world is to make the large internet almost entirely useless, even more so than it is.
I have something that's can't believe we've entered an era where I have to say in my opinion. Of course it's my fucking opinion. I
also have a great example of this from today.
Well, 1 second.
But go on.
This is how I think AI is going to change the world.
Yeah.
You're going to lose all human contact from certain industries. You think it's bad now when David from some country who doesn't speak English is your customer service rep? You think it's bad now that we have banks that you can't walk into an establishment and say, bank manager, stop fucking up my finances? You think it's bad now?
Right now?
Yeah. Think about something. I can walk into, and I don't do this, but I can walk into Whole Foods. Every person that calls Whole Foods Whole Paycheck is now without a job because of AI.
Mm-hmm.
It's not progress, it's regress. We are
Exactly.
eliminating the value of humanity for the sake of not Google, not Facebook, not Microsoft. None of these companies matter. Do you know why they don't matter? Because they're owned by BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street.
Yep.
3 companies own 88% of the S&P 500. 3. Now, don't get me wrong. Vanguard, I got a lot of money with them because they make me money. But you know what? Think about that. When you buy a stock, if you buy Google because you think it's a sound investment, bullshit. They're not making money for you. They're making money for BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Because if BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street decide they no longer like Google, Google's out of business. Facebook's out of business. And you know what? They don't care. Do you know why they don't care? They're already rich. So it affects everybody down farther.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
That's my bomb. So you can continue now.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's absolutely true, right? And like I think that's what that's what I was trying to get at. That's what is leading to the enshitification of the internet, right? Is the stock market, right? Which is exactly like you said, is controlled by BlackRock, Vanguard, and a couple of other large capital firms, right? And as soon as one of them can eat the other one, they will absolutely do that, right? Until there's until for optics, there are only 2 dogs on top, and those companies are owned by all the same people, right? Or controlled by all the same people. That's absolutely it. Is that every service that becomes publicly traded, Google, Facebook, whatever, right, is in the hands of these major corporations. Not in the major corporations, in the hands of these giant financial firms, right?
Yeah, they're not into
trillions and trillions of dollars.
Yeah, no, its wealth is unimaginable.
Yeah, like fantasy dragons would be so jealous of the giant piles of gold that these fuckers are sleeping on.
All right, we're at our mark, so let's close this up. We got a couple more topics. Talk to me about the small web.
The perfect example, the one thing I want to mention that just happened today, the perfect example of how AI is going to ruin the internet. Right now, if you search Tiananmen Square or Tank Guy, I can't remember which one, Tiananmen Square Tank Guy on Google Images, the first search result that pops up is an AI generated selfie of that guy taking a selfie in front of a tank. Like it is genuinely destroying history. And I don't think that's a world we want to live in. That's not a world I want to live in.
If I type in Tank Guy, I see the Chinese Communist Party getting ready to, mow down this guy. That's what I see. Chinese. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong, because obviously Google and any other search engine, there's algorithms that are behind what they serve you, right?
Yeah.
But my first link is Wikipedia.
Yeah. This was a headline on 404 Media. Who knows how it's changed now? It's possible that Google has tried to headline that, but this was 404 Media is a great new media website, by the way, not publicly traded, started by some former Vice journalists like Joseph Cox, who just got laid off. Big fan of them. Definitely check out 404 Media. Anyway, I thought that was an amazing example of the enshitification of the internet.
I think
the small web.
Yeah, let's talk about the small web.
Yeah. Sorry, I
brought us off track. We're going to have you on again. We can have you. Shoot, when this is done, we can keep recording for another hour. We'll figure, and we'll turn it into segments. TED Talks on the enshitification of the internet.
I feel like me and you could have a ranting contest, because I think we could go toe to toe for who can rant the longest. And we'll get some whiskey involved, and then it'll really be a marathon.
The red trailer of More Than the Refresh. Okay, talk to me about the small web.
Yeah, the small web. So what we were just talking about, right? The stock market owning everything, right? BlackRock, Vanguard, whatever, owning everything, right? I I want to return to an internet that is even better than the old internet, right? I'd say I want to return to the old internet, but the old internet had some terrible things, right? And it was also new. Sure. We were learning a lot of things, right? We were learning, how to do encryption, how to do content moderation, right? We were learning how to create communities, right? And what those communities should look like. We have a lot of better technologies and frankly, better computers now, right? But I want to return to an internet that's not controlled by giant corporations, right? That's not 5 websites sharing content from the other 4. So I'm really excited about things like Mastodon and Blue Sky, right? About things like decentralized protocols. The Cult of the Dead Cow, which is a hacktivist group that really inspired me, just introduced a new decentralized protocol called Valid, right? Which I'm really excited to check out.
Yeah, but none of these are new. I mean, Archie was decentralized. I mean, if you want to talk something modern, XMPP, you're kind of reinventing the wheel at this point.
Encrypted though, end-to-end encrypted, not necessarily storing unencrypted data. There's a lot of, it's not a new concept to be decentralized, right? You're absolutely correct. The internet used to be mostly decentralized, and we have centralized it, right? And I want to, this is not a catchy phrase, I want to re-decentralize the internet, right? And so that's what
That's not going to win a marketing award there.
No. But I'm not in marketing, right? Because I have a soul.
Oh, dick! That was a dick thing to say. Not all marketing people are bad. Some marketing people, I mean, think of the person that said Volvo. They're boxy, but they're good. Okay,
I say similar jokes to our lawyers all the time, and I love them. But
that's because they're protecting you. You wouldn't love them if you were going against them.
Exactly. Oh no way. I wouldn't want to go against EFF's lawyers. But yeah, I want to return to that web, right? And so I'm really excited about people hosting their own social media services, right? I'm excited about Mastodon. I'm excited about an internet that's not run by corporations, right? And I want to get back to that, right? And I want to get back to interoperability, where like if I don't like Blue Sky, right, I can take my data and leave, right? If I don't like Mastodon, the Mastodon server I'm on, I can take my data and go to another server because the protocol is good, right? And nobody owns the protocol, right? I love that, and I want to get back to that, right? And I think
I'm on Blue Sky, and I know, as with any social media, it depends on what you're looking for. But whenever I open my Blue Sky, all I see is a bunch of raging ridiculousness. And I'm sure if I searched out other people, I wouldn't see that. But I think, and I agree with you. I would like to see people taking more control, taking more accountability, more responsibility, right, and a little bit less Netflix and chill. Maybe more chill, but not as much Netflix in their lives.
Certainly less YouTube.
Yeah, right. I mean, but what I would like to see is we got into this idea, which to me, this is the enshitification. We got into this idea that being anonymous is a good thing. Now, here's the deal. So Elon Musk, and whether you like him or not, I don't care. I'm actually not that big of a fan personally, but I do think he's done a lot of technology. Whether he designed it or not is irrelevant. He is the person that people see.
He has bought a lot of excellent technology.
He has bought a lot of excellent technology and brought it to the consumer. I mean, I love Starlink, for example. But he's talking about, we're going to start charging. Now, obviously, this is a because he pissed off 50% of the population, and they're leaving his platform, so he has no advertising dollars. Fine, that's actually one of the great things about the, in theory, free market. But instead of making people pay, say, $5 a month or $1 a month, it doesn't matter, to be verified, do it the other way. We will verify you for free. You will get your blue check mark for free. When people see that mark, they know you have gone through an identity process. Banks and medical companies do this all the time. So you do it for free. And then if you want to be a fucking Facebook keyboard troll warrior who has no life and just they want the only thing they can do is try to figure out how to make you upset. That's what they live for, because they don't have a wife that loves them or a husband that loves them. Their kids hate them, whatever the case may be. They're just shitty people. Those people, they're not verified. And then you say a filter, drop down, block all non-verified. Boom! The internet becomes instantly better. Not great, but better. What do you think?
I think that's an interesting idea. And like, I mean, I do want to push back. I think that pseudonymity or anonymity is really good in some cases, right? Like, and I agree. There's a huge problem with trolls and bots and shit, right? And like, I think like there are certainly some good things about verification, right? Like having verified journalist accounts was a big part of actually what made Twitter good. Back in the before time. But like, so you could actually say like, okay, this person is, actually some sort of journalist, it probably isn't, it's less likely that they're making shit up wholesale. Right. At least we'll say less likely. Right. And most journalists are actually like, really good at their jobs and pretty honest people. Right. Although obviously the government does love to use the media for propaganda. Right.
Sure.
Everybody
does. It's not just the government.
Well, I love using the media for propaganda. What do you think I'm doing right now? So yeah, that said, I think that there is a good reason for anonymity, right? Like where I want a site where I can say, Nancy Pelosi sucks, right? Or we're nonpartisan. So, who's a Republican politician? Tom Cruise sucks, right? I want a website where I can say a politician sucks without them, deciding that I'm going to lean on, I'm going to lean on that website to give me his actual identity so that I can go ruin his life. Right. And we have a First Amendment in this country, right? But especially if I live in it.
I need to interject. I think you meant Ted Cruz, not Tom Cruise, because Tom Cruise recently made one of the best movies ever. Okay?
I mean,
let's be clear. To be fair, to be nonpartisan, I'm perfectly happy to pick on Nancy Pelosi. I'm also perfectly happy to pick on Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
But Tom Cruise is a very short national treasure. Unfortunately, who's a Scientologist. Anyway.
I did mean Ted Cruz. Yeah. And, because I value my life and limb and my children, I'm not going to say anything about Scientology.
Well, you are in California. That would be dangerous. I'm not afraid to call out cults that harbor rapists. Okay. I'm not afraid of that.
The best part about Scientology is that, what's his name? L. Ron Hubbard had a bet with another science fiction writer about who could start the biggest cult the quickest. Yeah, and L. Ron Hubbard won.
It's fantastic. I mean, he wrote something about what they became.
Yeah,
right.
And people are still like, no, this is totally real. This is definitely things totally real. Totally real thing that was discovered by a science fiction author who wrote about it.
Well, I mean, maybe that's where Star Wars came from.
Yeah.
Right. You remember not 7, 8, and 9, right? But when they did 1, 2, and 3 back when you were like 8. And is that about right?
I was what years did that was like what year did that
was like I think 99 was the first one. I don't know.
Oh no, I was like 14 or something.
Okay, so
I
was close. I was a guess. I was close. Yeah. But they started talking about how the Force is these living beings inside you that you can learn.
Right. The midichlorians.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, is that what I said? I meant the Thetans. Whatever. Anyway.
The Thetans.
Yeah. Anyway, how did I get on Scientology? Oh, right. So I want an internet where I can say. I want an internet where I can cyberbully politicians, right? Without to a nice degree, with not to a harassment, not to a legally actionable harassment degree, right? But without them coming back, and I think that that's important, right? Like I think that there is one of the things I like about the internet is that you can, you can have some freedom of expression, right? And I think in countries where there's not a First Amendment guarantee, right? In so much as we have it. I think that is especially important, right? Like if I want to talk some shit about the king of Thailand, right? And I live in Thailand, I'm going to need some anonymity to do that, right? And so I think
So
that's where anonymity is important.
now I'm definitely coming from a U.S. centric position. So I think that there's definitely a point where you do, if you're talking about Thailand, you're talking about South Africa, you're talking about Myanmar, Russia.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely, or frankly, even Germany. I think that there's definitely a consideration there.
Yeah.
That being said, one, there's nothing stopping you from doing that right now. Load up your fucking website.
Totally.
Okay. Number two, when you talk about a politician, if I talk about Nancy Pelosi,
yeah,
I don't like her. I think she's a crook. I think Ted Cruz, he's a slime ball. I don't think he has enough money to be a crook. Maybe he does. He's in Texas. Who knows? But I think the mistake that we have made, one, there is no constitutional right to privacy, right? It's not in the Constitution. Okay, that's number one. So the idea, I have a right to privacy, not in the public, you don't. And the internet is public. You have a right to privacy in your home, on your property. That's it. That's the only thing that's been basically established. And every politician in the world disagrees with that because they don't want you to smoke weed or they don't want you to be gay. One or the other. Okay? So fuck them. What is more important is that people need to be willing to actually take accountability for their speech. We are where we are right now between 2012, 2016, 2020, and now 2024, where no one wants to take accountability for what they say or who they are and what they do, and they just deflect. And then you get fake news narratives, which, frankly, were real. There were a lot of the quote-unquote fake news was real news.
Sure.
But
Absolutely.
because we have no accountability, no one can say for a fact, except for the people that are right here, right now, and even then, that's arguable, JD's a dick.
Yeah.
Right? I can say that's fake news.
Right.
But because no one's going to take accountability. If you're going to be a dick, fine. Own the fact that you're a dick. We need dicks in this world. That's how we get babies. So it's just, right? I mean, but be willing to own the fact that you're a dick. If you're not willing to, this is what I say to my team. If you have a problem, bring it to management. If you are not comfortable bringing it to management, bring an advocate, another team member, with you and bring it to management together. Okay? Yeah. The same needs to apply to society. If you do not feel comfortable owning your shit, whatever it is you're saying, if you do not feel comfortable owning your shit, shut the fuck up. Otherwise, if you do feel comfortable but you're afraid, fine. Right. Find an advocate. Find two advocates and bring your shit to the table together, but own it.
Exactly. Yeah. I totally agree with you on that. Right. I mean, that's, I think why I'm in a union and support unions, right. Is because I fully believe in the power of collective action and that you should own your shit and you should find other people to, if your idea is really worth a damn, you'll be able to convince at least, and other people, depending on the size of the, group that you're trying to convince, right. That is worth a damn. Right. And if you can't convince that many people, then it ain't worth a damn. And I think that to tie that back to the small internet, to wrap this up in a nice little bow, I think that the answer to what I want is there should be a variety of different, social media or whatever websites where I can take my shit to, right? Like if there should be a site where I can just have my, people that I know in real life or that I at least respect in real life that are verified, that are my friends. And that's the only feed I see. Right. And then there should be another site where, everybody can post whatever shit that they want. Right. Like I think,
but then you get 4chan and 8chan and those are not great places.
No, they're not great places. Right. But that should, No, they're not great places. And I was about to say, still
I'm just trying to see how you can bring this around here.
But like, there should be a place where I as a Thai person can go say, fuck the King of Thailand, right? Like that needs to exist, right? And like, yeah, you can't have that without, also like you're always going to have some type of 4chan, right? Like a problem right now is that 4chan and 8chan have leaked their containment fields.
Hi little ones.
Hi guys. The problem right now is that 4chan and 8chan have. Here, say hi to first world.
You're saying hi to the world, young man.
The problem right now is that 4chan and 8chan have leaked their containment fields.
This is totally my bad. We're over. I apologize. We're over time.
Anyway, they've leaked their containment fields, and the radioactive waste has poisoned the rest of the world. Right?
Well, now hold on. Let's not bash nuclear energy because it's actually truly one of our only options.
When we talk about nuclear energy.
Yeah, when we start talking about that kind of stuff, let's bash stuff like PFASs, Teflon.
That's Tiananmen Square, buddy.
All right. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. How can our listeners support the EFF? Now, let me be very clear, folks. I know a lot of people have a lot of nonprofits that they love, whether it be opensource.org or EFF or ACLU, even though the ACLU does very little ACLU work anymore. My two favorite currently are the EFF and FIRE. Those are my two right now. But how can we support the EFF? How do we help the EFF continue their mission to provide privacy and civil liberties in the digital age?
Yes. So EFF is at least half of our yearly funding, if not more, comes from individual members. I joked earlier that we're a t-shirt company with a side hustle and civil liberties,
right?
But really, we are funded. Most of our funding comes from individual donations, right? Small, not small, but like people like you, people like the people at Postgres World, donating, $20 a year, $100 a year, right? Whatever you can afford, and that's what sustains us, and that's what lets us remain independent, right? We don't take we don't take any money with strings attached, right? We certainly, we don't take any money. We don't take any money from the U.S. government. We don't get a lot of money from Google and Facebook. You might understand why. But we get a lot of money. But we get a lot of money from Google and Facebook employees because there's a lot of people at those companies, individuals at those companies who are good people who support our mission, who don't want to work at shitty places. Right?
Yeah, no, there's definitely, that's something that should be said real quick. A company does not necessarily, a company may be doing things that you don't agree with. That doesn't mean there's not good people there. Same with the government. There's a lot of good people in government trying to do good things.
Yeah.
It's just that the majority...
They're doing God's work, pushing against these gigantic machines, right? And these gigantic, they're trying to turn the Titanic around with an oar, right?
They're being tank man.
And yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So EFF.org. There should be a donate button right on top.
Yeah. Yeah, donate to us. Check out our blog posts. We have action alerts. If you go to act.eff.org, these are things that we want you to tell your representatives in government, your Congress people, right, about laws coming up that we think are particularly bad, right? So go check those out. Turns out lobbying does work, right? That's why lobbyists do it.
Exactly, and we can lobby too.
Right, we can lobby too. We can send emails to Congress, and those actually do feed into it, right? So check that out, and donate to EFF. Check out our blog post, share our articles, and become a member if you can.
All right, and with that, this has been a live event of More Than a Refresh, a podcast about data and the people who wrangle it. It is sponsored by EFF, Command Prompt, and Postgres World.